This is the second video to finish up our Chapter 1 review for Math 7. So for 21 and 22, our directions are, they say to find the mean of the integers. Now we talked about mean in class, that is adding up all the integers given and then dividing by the amount of integers that you have. So our first one, number 21, all of the integers are negative. Now since they all have the same sign, I can combine all 5 together and then just use that sign. So I'm actually adding up negative 45 plus negative 20 plus negative 35 plus negative 25 plus negative 40. Now I'm just going to ignore the signs for now, and I can add these to the side. Again, you don't have to do all this work in your head. I like seeing the work shown. So adding up all 5 of these, you end up getting 165. So it is negative 165. And I'm going to divide that by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, since I have 5 integers. If I need to do a long division on the side, that's fine. A negative divided by a positive, this is another integer rule. My answer, my quotient is going to be negative. It's going to be a negative 33. So I'm going to box that in there. For number 22, I have both negative and positive. So what I would do is combine all of your negatives. So I have a negative 15, negative 29, negative 25. I end up getting negative 69 for that one. And then I have a positive 17, a positive 3, and a positive 7. That is a positive 27. So I have negative 69 plus 27, which is a negative 42. I know it's negative because I have more negatives than positives. And I'm going to divide 42, or negative 42, by 6, since there are 6 different integers. And that will be, again, that quotient will be negative. And if I think 6 times what is going to equal 42, that would be 7. So my answer is negative 7. Now 23 says your video game scores are 64, negative 13, 73, negative 5, and 36. What were your lowest and highest scores? So this is, again, just making sure we understand the ideas of negative and positive. So our lowest, I'm going to write lowest here. Our lowest score would be negative 13. And our highest, so the biggest number, will be the largest positive, which is 64. It says, what was your mean score? Again, I have to add up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 integers and divide by 5. I end up getting a total of 155 when I do that math. Divide it by 5, and you get a mean score of 31 points. I'm going to box that in there. Again, put your work to the side. I like to combine my positives, so 64, 73, and 36 to the side, and then combine my negatives, which would be a negative 18. And then combining those together, you get a positive 155. Now 25 and 26, we've seen a few problems like this before. It's using mental math, so there's really no work to be shown here. This is, again, showing me how you understand math, if you're, or those integer rules, if you're really grasping those ideas. So I have a negative 24 plus m equals negative 47. So I'm adding something to negative 24 to get a larger negative number. So hopefully when I look at that, you guys know automatically m needs to be a negative number. So since all the signs are going to be negative, 24 plus what is going to equal 47 is what I'm thinking in my head. And I know that will be a negative 23. Equals m. Make sure you put what it equals. You could put m equals negative 23. Either way, it's same thing. But I want you guys to double check. So negative 24 plus a negative 23, yes, that does equal negative 47, and then move on. Don't just put something down, think you're right, and move on. Make sure you check that. Sometimes we make a little mistake, and then when we go back and check it, we realize we did something wrong. So for 26, d minus negative 7. I'm going to actually change this into an addition problem since there are 2 negative signs together, and have it say d plus 7 equals negative 19. Now I still have a negative answer, so I know that my d has to be bigger, the actual number has to be bigger than 7 and negative 19. So my d needs to be bigger than a negative 19. It needs to be a larger negative number. So what number could I add a positive 7 to? So become less positive by 7 to equal negative 19. In this case, d is going to equal negative 26. I would plug that in, make sure a negative 26 plus a positive 7 is a negative 19, and in this case it is. For 27 and 28, they want you to find the next two numbers in the pattern. So our first job is to actually identify the pattern. So I'm going to look at 27. I'm going to first notice that every other integer is negative. So that means I'm going to be doing some operation with a negative integer. So I'm either adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. Now, since it is every other that is negative, it's going to be multiplication or division. So I see my numbers are getting bigger, so I know it's going to be a multiplication. To get from 4 to negative 12, I would multiply by negative 3. To check to make sure that's right, I'm going to do negative 12 times negative 3. Ends up being negative 36, and so on there. So I know that I'm multiplying by a negative 3. That is my pattern. Now that I've identified my pattern, I need to find the next two numbers in the pattern. So negative 108 multiplied by a negative 3, that will be 324. Again, do your work to the side. And then 324 times negative 3 will be a negative 972. And those are my answers there. Now on to 28. Again, I have every other integer is negative, so I'm either multiplying or dividing by a negative integer. Here, we see that our numbers are going down, so it will be a division problem. To get from 800 to 400, I divide by 2, divide by 2, negative 2, should be a negative 2, excuse me, and then divide by negative 2. Now you could also think about multiplying by negative 1/2. Either one would be okay there. So if I keep this pattern up, dividing by negative 2, I would take 100 divided by negative 2. When I divide 100 by negative 2, I get a positive 50. And then if I take that positive 50, divide it by, negative 50, I'm sorry. 100 divided by negative 2 will be negative 50. I take that negative 50 and I divide it again by a negative 2, and I will get a positive 25. So those are my answers for that one. Now for 29. It says the table shows a bank account balance for a 5-day period. Which day had the balance closest to 0? So now that we're thinking about money here, bank accounts, negative numbers are they make a little bit more sense in this case, so hopefully this helps us think through this. So which day has the balance closest to 0? Again, now we're kind of going back to the idea of absolute value. What number is closest to 0 if we planted all these numbers on a number line? Now, it's asking what day, not what number. So our number that is closest to 0 here would be negative 16. So what day is that? That would be Friday, and you would just write Friday. And that would be your answer there. Box that in. Find the range. Now we also talked about range very quickly in class. That's taking the largest number, which in this case is 125, and subtracting the smallest number, which here is negative 55. So I'm subtracting a negative 55. Remember, when we are subtracting negatives, it's just like adding a positive. So 125 plus 55 is $180. Remember to label. So the range of balances is between, it varies $180 throughout the week. Now what integer represents the change in balance from Monday to Tuesday? Now if we look back up, I'm going to scroll this up real quick. Monday to Tuesday, it's negative $21 you start on Monday, and then Tuesday it becomes a negative 55. So it becomes even smaller, even less money, so it becomes more negative. So we know it's going to be a negative number, and to get from negative 21 to negative 55, we must subtract 34. So the integer that would represent the change in balance would be negative 34, because the change is going down. I'm becoming more negative in my bank account. I'm losing more money. It needs to be a negative number, not a positive. In this case, positive numbers would stand for if I was getting paid and I was putting money into my account, not taking more money out. Now my last question says, based on the given 5 balances, what is the average? So here we're looking at the average balance, which is another word for mean. So I'm going to add up all 5 integers. I'm going to scroll it down just so we can still see it. I have 3 negatives, 2 positives, so I'm actually going to combine all my negatives first. Since they're all negative, I know I can just add up the numbers and then keep that sign. And I'm going to get 92. But I need to remember it's negative 92. And then I'm going to combine all my positives, which is a little bit easier. 102, 125, I'm going to add those together and get 227. Now I have negative 92 plus 227. When I look at that expression, when I simplify it, I know my answer should be a positive. I have more positives than negatives. In this case, it will be 135. Now I have 5 days I'm looking at. So that 135 should be divided by 5 days, which here will be 27. So based on the given 5 balances, what's the average balance of the 5-day period? It would be $27. Remember to label. So hopefully these 2 videos helped you. You guys did really well. If you have any further questions, make sure to contact me, but hopefully this video kind of explained anything if you still needed some extra guidance. Our last page on the review guide is a few different definitions that we need to make sure we remember. We took notes on this in our books, so make sure you copy the book definition from our notebooks. Your notebook definition, which is the same thing as book definition, you put that in this second column. Your definition is putting it in your own words and then giving me an example. If you'd like to draw a picture, if it's more appropriate, that would be fine. For absolute value, you could draw a number line. But make sure you fill these out. Using the correct vocabulary in math is really important. There's only a few on here, but that should be the end of the video. Rewatch anything that you still need a little bit of clarification on, and good luck on your test.